This is Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Inspiring and providing real insight to our listeners with every story. Exploring deep stories behind every guest. Please welcome your host, Bo Tiffany.
Hey, David. Thanks for coming on Digital Voices. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm excellent. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Reading over your history, I was inspired by your story. So let's dig at your roots a little bit, Dave. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Denver, Colorado. My family was actually originally from Europe and South America, and came here as immigrants and settled in Colorado, and that's where I started this whole journey.
Wow. So how old were you when you immigrated here to the States then?
So my mother came from Bolivia. She was actually born in Bolivia, and she came as an immigrant about 7, 8 years old. Didn't speak any English, and when they migrated to Colorado, they settled there, and that's where I was born in Colorado. So I grew up, attempting to learn how to speak Spanish and kind of learning that culture with my grandparents, and my grandfather's European. So I kind of got the best of both worlds there. So yeah, that's where I started things out.
Well, and to pick a state to start with, Colorado is beautiful. What part of Colorado did you set in?
So we settled in Denver. First of all, it is gorgeous, by the way, extremely cold. So I wasn't really a big fan of all the snow.
Sure.
But yeah, my parents were very, very young when they met. They were in high school. My dad was 16. My mom was 17, almost 18. And they went to a party and had a great night, and I was the result of that great night. And so they were very young, very poor. My dad dropped out of high school and went to go work in the mailroom, and they were able to buy a very tiny little mobile home in a rough part of Denver, and that's where I grew up. Was in that mobile home, very poor.
What was that like for you? Did you realize being in poverty, or was it natural to you because that's what you were from?
That's a good question. So, I think that when you're young, you kind of don't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that as I got a little bit older, you start to have these realizations. And so, first of all, we were very, very poor, meaning like my parents were, my mom had to hawk her wedding ring and some of her clothing just to pay for food.
Sure.
There was a night, my mom told the story when she made some pasta, and she poured the pasta in, and there was a bunch of, bugs in the pasta, and we were so poor, she didn't tell us about it. She just cooked it and we all ate it. So, those were rough times. I think, our family, my parents really tried to hold things together, and they were young. My mom didn't work consistently, and like I said, my dad made, it was like $2 an hour or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that was hard. I think as I started to get into kindergarten and school, that's when I gained a little bit of perspective, and you start to kind of realize, wow, we really are poor. There's other kids that have new shoes, and mine have holes in them.
Yeah.
There's other kids that get to eat regular cereal, even
Right.
thing like Frosted Flakes was a really big deal.
Yeah.
We didn't, even regular milk was a really big deal. We drink powdered milk. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that as, you try to make the best out of it when you're young. But, I think since a young boy, it really grew this drive in me to really create a better life for, I think, myself and other people. And it was, it was a great learning experience. I think it created a lot of, humility watching my parents really go through those challenges.
Well, and out of that came a drive for you, which is carried through your whole life. I think that's important because that lit the fire. And the other thing too is that you're able to identify with what it's like not to have anything, to the point where, like you said, you were at the dire straits of poverty. In Denver area, it's cold. You're in a mobile home. What kind of things were you interested in? What was starting to drive you, or what were your interests early on?
I remember as a young boy, and this is going to get a little philosophical, but I remember as a young boy, I would go underneath our mobile home, and it was a single wide mobile home and dirt underneath. And I remember I would go into the mobile home and I would just sit and observe, and there was this world going on underneath the mobile home of insects, and they were living and digging holes and building, spider webs. And it was really kind of this like miraculous thing. And I would almost go and escape under there. And the reason that's so interesting for me is because I built this kind of appreciation for all of these things that were happening on this other level.
Mm-hmm.
And, it made me realize that, the world is this really beautiful, amazing place. And, it didn't need to be as difficult as that mobile home experience. There were some times where I remember one particular weekend, I got up on a Saturday morning and I said, "Hey, Dad, can I go outside and play?" And my dad said no. And I looked out the window, and this mobile home park was between two bars, bikers and a lot of people doing drugs out there. And there was a murder that had happened the night before.
Oh.
And I looked out the window, and, there was a dumpster, had yellow tape all over it, and there was, his body. It was a horrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
But, those are the types of experiences sometimes when you're in these challenging part of towns, and a lot of people have, gone through these difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those types of experiences, they give you perspective, they help you, I think, create an appreciation, like you said, I think a drive for myself of, you see, a lot of people struggling. And so I think as a young age, I saw a lot of struggle, and it's made me really think, do I want my life to be like this? Number one. And number two, how can I not only build a new life for myself, but how can I help other people? How can I help these other people that are struggling every day? They're struggling with money, they're struggling with family, they're struggling with health. And it was a challenging thing. And so I think that's where my drive started, of really beginning to kind of see the wonder in the world combined with, these challenges these people are going through. And I think that was the beginning of this inner drive that I had to really, I think, make the world a better place for everybody around me, including myself.
Not everybody carries that from those experiences. That's a small percentage. And it's a mindset. Where did that come from? So I know that, I understand the experiences underneath the house and seeing kind of that separate world, but I hear a empathy in your soul and a desire to change the world or make it a better place. That stems from somewhere. Do you know where that came from, or is that just the way you were born, do you think?
That's also a good question. I don't totally know. I've wondered that myself. I think I've had some life experiences when I was young that have maybe helped mold that. One in particular, we had a neighbor that lived across the street, and it was an older woman. She was in her 80s, and she had a very rundown mobile home. She was kind of a hoarder. There was stuff everywhere. And I would go over to her house. My parents had very good hearts, and so my mom would go over and bring her things. We'd go and help her out with things. And so I think my mom was able to show me empathy in a lot of ways. My dad, as dysfunctional as they were, they separated 18 times in 20 years, and there was drug abuse and alcoholism and some, verbal and physical abuse that had happened. But, my dad was also kind of saw the beauty in life. So I think that was part of it. When I would go over to this neighbor's house, I remember seeing her struggle, and I would listen to her story, and she had a difficult life. And I remember thinking, I don't know, whatever religion you are, right? We're floating around this blue ball, right? We don't know why we're here.
Right.
And everybody has a different belief system, and I respect that. But I remember thinking we might only have one chance at this. And I was sad, and I had this empathy for her because I'd seen her regret. And she had lived 85 years, and she had regret with her children and with her family. And, her marriage didn't work out. She wasn't able to live her dreams. She wasn't able to live where she wanted to live. And, for whatever reason, fear, there's a lot of maybe different reasons. But I remember thinking it was really heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for me, heartbreaking for my mom, and heartbreaking for her that she had gone her entire life and wasn't able to, for whatever reason, fulfill her potential.
Sure.
And I think that was the beginning for me of really thinking, how can I make a difference, and how can I help people like this, really try to reach their potential in whatever way. So I think that was the beginning of that passion and that for me.
you had some obstacles growing up. Things other than just living in poverty were difficult for you. I know that you had ADHD as well as had to learn how to cope and deal with Tourette's syndrome. Can you tell us about that journey?
The ADHD and the Tourette's is genetic, and there's different family members that have struggled with it, including my aunt. My dad has elements, my grandma. I got it really bad, a little bit worse. And so, as I was growing up, there's definitely some benefits to it from creativity. The brain is wired a little bit differently. So there are some great things. The challenges were, as a young boy, when you have a difficult time, sitting in class and you don't know why. And then on top of it, your eyes are twitching. And so I had a lot of twitches. I didn't, I wasn't screaming profanities or anything like that, but I had a lot of eye twitches and shoulder twitches and mouth twitches, and they're uncontrollable. And so, when you're a young boy, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, even in junior high into high school, these twitches are uncontrollable. And, kids are rude and mean. Sometimes they're wonderful, but, So, I think that what that did for me was, it was an interesting experience where, kids would come up and say, "Why the heck are you doing that? Just stop that." I remember one of my best friends would say, "Stop that." And I said, "I can't." And so I think not being able to control that part was an interesting thing for me that I had to work through. And then the ADHD was as well. My parents were not educated, not only literally, but on this particular topic. So they didn't completely understand why I couldn't stop doing these things or why I couldn't sit in class. And so, that was hard. That journey was difficult of going through school, and, kids would stare at me when I'm twitching. And, I think that what those things do, hopefully for a lot of people, is they built a resilience in me.
Right.
That like, I kind of realized, after time, you're like, yeah, I twitch. I don't know what to tell you. If you don't like it, don't be around me. And I hope that you love me for who I am. And same thing with the ADHD. I had a very impactful moment when I was in high school. I had a teacher come up to me, I think I was a freshman, and she sat me down and she said, "You're going to be extraordinary." And it was the first time I had ever heard that from anybody. And I said, "Why do you say that?" And she said, "This structure that you're in right now is not built for you." But she said, "You will find the thing that does work for you." And she said, "It's okay. You have ADHD, you have these twitches. This structure doesn't have to work for everybody, and it's not built for you, and you're going to have an amazing life." And, through this entire time of teachers getting frustrated with me, sometimes the teachers would say, "Stop doing that."
Right.
And I couldn't, and that was really hard. Right. So, it made me even realize like how much one person, it solidified this drive and empathy and passion for me to help other people, because her words to me that day meant everything to me.
Yeah.
And so she kind of spoke this thing into me, right, where I thought, wow, somebody does believe in me, besides my mom, right?
Right.
And sees this in me. So, that was a little bit of that journey.
Do you remember her
as
name?
a young boy? You know what? I hate to say I don't. I've tried to remember, because I wanted to read. I ended up staying in contact with her for years. She relocated to Europe, and we would write letters, and I lost touch with her. But I let her know how impactful her words were that day, and how grateful I was for that.
That's great. There's people like that come along at the right time with that right message that can change and alter the course of our lives. And that's happened to me and a lot of my guests. So I'm really happy to hear that story. So, the resilience, there's some tools that you probably developed to deal with people like that. Some of my guests have used humor to overcome some of those obstacles. What were your tools that you used?
It's funny you say that. Humor. So growing up, I think when people struggle with these kinds of things and struggle with, either feeling like they fit in, or people are wondering why I'm twitching or I can't sit still in class, these kinds of things, right? It's difficult. And so, yeah, I agree with you. People build different types of skill sets to maneuver. And that's exactly what I did. I became the class clown. Even into high school, there were, some ridiculous things that I ended up doing, because I think ultimately, in hindsight, it was a way for me to deflect.
Hmm.
Um, and when people, instead of somebody saying stop twitching, they would say, "Oh my gosh, David's so funny." And that way I could control the narrative. I could control what they felt about me. I could control whether or not they liked me. And that was the mechanism that I built to kind of, I think, get through those times, as I became, the funny guy that was always joking or always pushing the boundaries, always doing crazy things, always the one that was, making everybody laugh. And I think that was the way that I kind of was able to navigate through those types of things. Not everything I did were things that I was, that I was proud of, but nevertheless, I was young, and that's how I really, I think, was able to kind of get through that. And I think through that I built some really great friends,
Hmm.
that were able to see through. One of my best friends, I met in junior high, and it was interesting. We recently, just a few months ago, had a conversation about my Tourette's, and I asked him a question. I said, not one time did you ever comment about my twitches. And I said, why? And he said, I saw right through it and I didn't care because I just see who you are. And, those are the types of people, I think, for all of us, whether you have Tourette's or any challenges, we want to really surround ourselves by. So, I kind of
Absolutely.
realized the more authentic I was, the more honest I was about myself, the good and the bad of myself, right? The world around you
Hmm.
almost fixes itself in a way. And I was surrounded by really great people that said, I don't care if you twitch. I think you're great, or I really like you, or I think you're funny, or I think you're smart, whatever those things are, right? You can build
Yeah.
those authentic connections.
No, that was important in my life growing up. My grandmother told me once, if you roll around with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And I,
She's a wise woman.
yeah, I quickly realized that,
Yeah.
if you surround yourself with negative influences or negative people, then that's what you have in your
Yeah.
life. The more positivity and the more people that can inspire you and motivate you, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, yeah, but look, that's an excellent point, and I think what's really hard, to add on to your point, is that when you, as you're growing up and you make friends and you build relationships, and some of these people are with your family, they're friends, they're neighbors, whatever. Sometimes those things organically build just because they're people around you,
Right.
but not all the times are they the best for you. And I think what's hard is that as you get older and you have these realizations, sometimes you have to make like very strategic decisions on, how do I want to spend my time? Do I
Hmm.
want to spend it with this person? Is this person bringing out the best in me, right? Or are they bringing me down?
Right.
And I think that's the difficult thing, is making those decisions that are best for your life and surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you to be a better person versus people that are just there. That's a big difference maker, and it was for me too.
Yeah.
It's a great point by you.
Thank you. So,
Yeah, love it.
you're going through high school. You finally get out. Did you look at college right away? What were your passions at that point?
Yeah, so while I was a class clown, struggling with some of these things, I did have an incredible passion for being an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And at the time, I didn't have a label for it, but ever since I was a little boy, I found myself building little businesses and little companies to try to figure out, how to make money. Or so, some of my first ones were, I was trading baseball cards and negotiating baseball card deals with people.
Nice.
um when I got into junior high and high school, I created, and this was not, the best thing, but I created a gambling ring where our friends would get together and all play poker. And I was the one that was running this, and it was for fun, it wasn't
Sure.
anything too serious. But and then as I got into high school, my dad and I, is kind of an odd thing, but we were really passionate about fish. And so we set up a breeding situation in our basement, and built a fish incubation hatchery system
Oh,
where
nice.
we were actually, taking, and this is, not to get it too much into detail, but it gave me the ability to take something and build a small business out of it and then sell these things. And it just became, a passion of mine.
Yeah.
So as I got out of school, I went to computer engineering school. But one of the things that I realized was I wanted to love what I was doing, and the idea of maybe doing something that I didn't love, was kind of sounded miserable to me. So I made a decision to open up a retail business, that did really well. And that was kind of the first, the first business that I built, and we were able to expand and ended up selling the business. But that was kind of my first experience. And I was, in my early 20s at that point on that first company.
That's amazing. So did someone say, hey, let's open up a retail shop, or you just had this fire and passion and you said, you know what, I'm going to open up a retail shop?
Yeah. Well, it was actually an aquarium retail business, and my dad and I were so passionate about this. He said, "Hey, I got a little bit of money, and I trust you. Let's make this happen." I opened the shop and was a driving force, and he helped fund it. And our relationship at the time was pretty rocky, because of some of his drug use and things like that, and so that was a little bit difficult. But yeah, it was a passion thing, a passion project, and that was kind of my first stint into understanding what it took to build a business. I made a ton of mistakes. I was working 7 days a week, 80, 90 hours a week.
Right.
I realized you need to have more balance. There's different things that I learned from that. But it also really helped me build, I think, confidence in myself that I can do this. I can build something if I'm really driven and I really want, I really want to create something. And I was able to do that from, the design of the store to the first customer that walked in the store to, customer number 10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
It gives you kind of that confidence and realization of like, I can do this, right? If I'm driven enough and passionate enough, and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, which I did. But yeah, that was my first experience building a business.
Well, I think you mentioned something too that I want to kind of bring out, which is early on you found a need for a sense of balance, and working those hours, you have to have balance in both business and personal life. If you don't, you're going to burn out on one end or the other. For you,
absolutely,
that was really important, I'm assuming, because I think you carried that forward with you as a lesson that you learned early on, which was really valuable, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And it's another good point by you. I think that, one of the things that I've had to be honest about with myself is, we all have a different genetic makeup. And in that, there's good and bad things. I realized that my family, I come from a family of addicts, and my sister and my father have been addicts. And with that, there's this, I remember my dad telling me, he was getting counseling, and the counselor told him, how some people have that off switch, you don't have it. And so I realized for myself, I don't have it either. And what that causes, whether it's drugs or working, there's no balance there. And so you just go and go and go and go until you destroy yourself. And you're right. I had to do a lot of, I think, internal work and self-awareness and this realization that I was going to, I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink. I wasn't doing cocaine, but I was working 90 hours a week, and I didn't know how to not do that. And so I was able to spend some time, you and I talked a little bit before this about your amazing journey and your education, self-education. And I did a lot of that myself, from reading, Eckhart Tolle books, The Power of Now. I mean, different kinds of things, so I could understand meditation and balance and the importance of exercise and running. And, it's still something that I have to work on every day. I'm not a balanced person naturally, but you're right. I mean, it's, one of the things I realized is that I'm the best version of myself when I'm balanced. I can work 100 hours a week, but that doesn't mean it's an effective 100 hours a week.
Right.
I realized I can work 60 hours a week if I'm balanced, and it's much more efficient.
Your
right?
efforts and time. Like you said, you can burn out and do half the work that you could normally do if you were fresh, and the quality of your work suffers too.
Yeah, exactly. So that was an interesting realization when I realized, wow, I can work 50 or 60 hours a week and get 5 times the amount done, because I'm not in a state of burnout or frustration or exhaustion.
Right.
The people around me are better. I'm more inspired. I'm more creative. But that took, when that's not my natural makeup. I think for a lot of other people I know I've met, it takes, that type of discipline to realize that if I need to go jogging today, even though I, want to start working, the jogging will actually make that work, like I said,
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
and more efficient. And for me, I think a better person for my wife and my kids, and a better leader for the people that I work with.
Yeah. One of the keys that I think that I'm hearing through your life is that you're an observer, and that knack of being aware of your surroundings also then transfers into being aware of yourself. And when you have that sense of self and you have your sense of surroundings, it gives you a awareness that helps keep things in check.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I don't know how philosophical we want to go, but, I think for all humans, we all can be a little selfish, I'll just speak for myself.
Hmm.
And without that level of awareness of realizing that, you know, we all think everything we're doing is the most important thing in the world, when you kind of take a step out of yourself and you realize, I'm a much better person when I'm helping other people. And you start to think about, for myself, that awareness kind of helped me start to think about, what type of legacy do I want to leave? What type of family do I want to have?
Hmm.
What type of impact do I want to make on other people? And I think that awareness, is something that, I think all of us have to work on, and I always have to continue to work on that.
Yeah.
Um,
But at
but
least you're
yeah, I
focused
think.
on working on it, because a lot of people don't have that self-awareness or the desire to work on that particular aspect of themselves. And that's a key for successful people. We all tend to work
Mhm.
on that version of ourselves, because life is until you finally pass away, it's a learning experience from day one till the time you pass. And,
Right.
I like that about it. I'm a lifetime learner. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that, Bo. My aunt is somebody that's been very impactful to me, and a really incredible woman. And we were just talking recently, and she's 63 now, and a very youthful and brilliant 63.
Mm.
And she said, she was talking to somebody about, I think it was about politics or something, and regardless of what side you're on.
Sure.
And this person said, I'm this religion, and this is what I believe in politics, and I'm not changing my mind. And we were talking about it, and she said, that's actually really sad. Because she
Yeah.
said, I've changed my mind so many times in my life, and I love that I've changed my mind, because that means that I'm learning.
Yep.
That means that I'm open. And she said, I'm 63, and I am the first person to admit I still don't know the answers to everything. And yeah, I love that about her. And
She
that for
sounds like a
myself,
wise lady.
she's amazing. But for myself, I've realized that the older I get, the more that I really don't know, right? Like,
Yep.
you think you know the answers, and then something changes and shifts. And so yeah, that realization that, again, not to get too deep on you, but
Yeah.
you know there's, however many religions and political systems that have happened over the history of mankind. And you kind of realize, I was reading a Neil deGrasse Tyson book, and he said, there's all this information in this book, but the reality of it is, the foundation of it is stemming from a level of ignorance,
Right.
because nobody really knows what, right? Like, we're floating around on this thing, and a lot of people have faith, and I think that's beautiful, and
Hmm.
whatever religion everybody believes in, or political system, whatever. But the reality of it is, at the root of it all, nobody really knows why we're here. And I think it's important for people to realize that, and because that keeps them continuing to learn, and be open to, I think, the beautiful things that we can all learn,
Hmm.
versus, saying, hey, I know the answers, and then you just curl up in a ball and, sit inside your house and believe you know the answers. And that doesn't really get anybody anywhere, in my opinion. So I
No.
couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you went from doing an aquarium retail into several other ventures. What were those steps like
Mhm.
for you, and how did that develop?
Um, I had a I had an impactful moment when I was about 25. Um, I sold my first business, and I started my second business, a little bit more of a niche type of business. And we had an acrylic manufacturing company, and some cool things that were happening. And I did that for a few years, and kind of lost interest in it. And it was funny when my wife and I met, I was doing well financially. I had some money coming in. I was, sold my business and things were going really well. I had sports cars, a big giant house. I had an autographed memorabilia collection. I had a watch collection, and then kind of anything that you could ever imagine, right?
Right.
I would pick my wife up in multiple cars, and the only reason that I even share this is because I was miserable, and I had all of this stuff, and I was miserable,
I call them
and
trappings, because you get to
couldn't
that.
agree with you more.
Yeah, you get to that point, and yeah, you still feel empty.
Hmm.
Like,
Absolutely.
I
Right.
had an interesting guest on that I'll mention just as an extra plug for my show.
Hmm.
Michael Long, that's what it is. He was a
Hmm.
speechwriter,
Hmm.
but wrote or co-wrote the book The Molecule of More, which is talking about dopamine and how that
Hmm.
drives certain desires, kind of like what we're talking about now, which is why I mentioned it. So
Hmm.
it's
100%.
it's interesting, especially bringing it back full circle, talking about self-control and knowing yourself and that kind of thing. You have
Hmm.
this internal chemistry that wants to lead you in certain directions, and
Hmm.
to be successful, you have to take control of yourself and your desires and your wants, and keep everything in check. Make sure that you have your priorities set. For you, I
Hmm.
think that was really important, and you had that kind of fundamentally set early on, which is what allowed you to grow. The other thing that I picked
Hmm.
out from what you just shared is that your second venture was into acrylic manufacturing, which, if you were doing retail for aquariums, is just a diversification of what kind of you're already doing, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I thought I didn't want to be in the retail side of it anymore. I thought, how could I build a more efficient business and
Yeah.
expand, nationally? And that was really my passion. And we did really well. We got contracts with professional sports teams and Denver Children's Hospital and Banner Health, and we did really really well. And I think what happened during that time, to your point about the dopamine, during this time was really impactful for me because that was my dad was still struggling a lot with a few years before that with a really bad cocaine addiction.
Hmm.
And there was actually some points where he was deeply depressed and borderline suicidal. And one of the things that I learned through him, and I'm always grateful for this, is I really understood how the human brain works. And to your point, we get dopamine through a lot of things. In some cases, it's alcohol. In some cases, it's cocaine.
Right.
In some cases, it's shopping, right?
Yep.
Or in my case, autographed memorabilia. And I remember I had my eyes set on this. I wanted this Michael Jordan autographed jersey. And I had this perfect spot on my wall for it. And I got this big check and I went out and bought it and I hung it on my wall and I thought, that's interesting. I don't feel any different. Um, and you're right. I was actually like depressed because I was expecting that I would have some sort of joy from it. And one of the things I started to realize was I was getting these dopamine rewards, right? I would get this dopamine reward and then the dopamine would go away.
Yeah.
And then I would go to the next dopamine thing and I needed these constant dopamine fixes. And so what happened during that time is my wife calls it a quarter life crisis. I felt this inner need to strip everything down. And I think I was a little arrogant at the time. I kind of felt like everything I touched turned to gold, but not always the case. I made tons of mistakes. So I sold everything. And we sold our house. I sold our sports cars. I sold everything. And we ended up in a one bedroom apartment. I went to work as a barista at one of the biggest coffee chains in the world. And I'll never forget, some people said, why in the, what are you doing? Like you have everything, right? And I said, I can't quite explain why I'm doing this, but I feel like I need this. And so in a matter of a couple of months, we had nothing. And I went from making a lot of money to, $9 an hour plus tips
Hmm.
and it's covered in milk and cleaning bathrooms. And I will tell you, it was one of the most unbelievable times of my life. It was humbling and it made me really think about, I think, get back to some of my childhood roots of, like the why behind the why.
Yeah.
Why am I doing these things? Am I cleaning the bathroom because I want somebody to see me clean the bathroom and I want to get promoted? Or am I cleaning the bathroom because it's the right thing to do? And I'll
Right.
tell you a quick story. I remember one night I was scheduled to clean the mop bucket inside of the store. And I was dressed really nice because I kind of went in like, oh, I'm this former CEO, right? And nobody
Mm-hmm.
cared. So,
Right.
and I was, I bleached, and I had these really nice black pinstripe pants on, and I basically came home covered in bleach and destroyed my pants. And I had breakfast with my dad and my grandfather the next day. And my grandfather was a wonderful guy, high integrity. And I was telling him, I said, I'm going to quit this thing. I'm so much better than this. And he looked at me and he said, I've never been more disappointed in you in my life. And I said, why? And he said, you're not so much better than this. And he told me something that changed my life. He said, it's not about cleaning the mop bucket. It's about how you clean the mop bucket that will determine your life. And he just walked away. And, in the moment, I was like, oh, whatever, grandpa, you're an idiot. You don't understand. But as
Wisest
the
words
time,
I've heard in a long time, though.
well, and so those words like really stuck with me. It's the how
Yeah.
you clean the mop bucket. And it's interesting because a couple of weeks later, I had an opportunity to clean the mop bucket again. And I made an intentional decision. And I said, I'm going to clean the mop bucket like nobody's ever seen it cleaned before. And it's going to be beautiful. And I don't care if anybody sees it. I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to listen to my grandpa, and I'm going to just go, who knows? Who knows if this is going to work? And my life changed from that moment, really, because yeah, it's one of these things. It's a very profound, simple thing, and a lot of people don't think about it. But I was doing a lot of these things for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I was buying autographed stuff for dopamine rewards. I was buying sports cars for the wrong reasons. And now my wife and I were to the point where we had a 1987 Subaru GL that barely ran. And I'm sitting cleaning the mop bucket, and it was this kind of new level of integrity that I had to bring to everything that I did.
Yeah.
And that was a big turning point for me, and I'm so grateful that I learned that lesson, I think in my mid-20s. And it's something I always have to continue to work on today.
Let me ask you, so was that you said it was a personal decision. It wasn't like you were forced to have to go and work in this particular situation and have this lifestyle change. This was just something that you were compelled to do, correct?
Yeah, it was. And, I can't really explain the reasons why. I am a spiritual person,
No,
and
and
I
that's
almost felt
okay.
like
My next question was, I wanted to make sure I had it right. But the next question I had is, how did your wife respond?
this is how I knew she really loved me. When we first went out on our first date, I picked her up in a brand new 350Z when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
And on our second date, I picked her up. I had a brand new BMW Z4, and I was trying to show off or whatever, and she just didn't care. When everything was gone, and I'm getting checks for $400 or $500 every 2 weeks, I felt I think I had my ego was attached a little bit to my success and to my money. And when that was not there anymore, everything really kind of burned away. And I needed to kind of face myself in a new way. And I think her and I built even a stronger relationship together because I realized she's not with me for all the fancy things that I have or the fact that she can tell people that I make a lot of money. She's with me for me. She loves me for me. And that was a really impactful time too. So, I mean, she's an incredible woman. We're still married today. We've been married 16 years. We have a beautiful marriage. But yeah, I mean, thank you. It's, there's ups and downs like all of us, but I don't know where I would be without her. I mean, she's been a rock for me. But those moments of, really kind of stripping myself down, I think for all of us, right? And kind of looking in the mirror and having this realization of that I needed to be humbled and I needed to figure out some of these elements in myself that I saw as gaps. And I think specifically, wanting these constant dopamine rewards of the sports cars and the watches and all these things that weren't really filling, there was a void there that I didn't know how to fix. Yeah. And so I thought, I'm going to strip all this down into nothing and I'm going to see what that's like. And it was really one of the most incredible and happy times of my life. And that was an amazing journey. And she's been by my side the entire time, inspiring me, challenging me, pushing me in ways. So yeah, she handled it really well. I think she handled it better than I did, by the way, because I definitely had some bumpy days.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Well, and I wanted to dig into that a little bit, just because behind a lot of my guests and a lot of the success, there's always a rock, is what you called her. I've heard that many times throughout my interviews. Behind every great man, there's a greater woman usually. And it sounds like, you, like a lot of my other successful guests, have this rock that you have from early on, and she's been with you through thick and thin. That's a partnership, and you're not alone. You're tackling the world together, and I think that gives that's an important element for, if you're finding balance in work and family, if you want to be successful and you want to have a good balance, to have the right type of wife, somebody that's supportive, has your back, and no matter what, through thick and thin. So anyways, I just wanted to touch on that. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree. I don't remember who said it. And I think maybe my wife tells me that. I think maybe it was Oprah or something. But she says one of the biggest, if not the most important decision you ever make is the person that you decide to spend your life with. And it was absolutely right. And that decision was incredibly impactful for me. And she's an incredible woman for sure.
That's great. You're a very lucky man. So, you got some experience then working in the barista. You started out kind of at the bottom, and you worked your way up, and that opened up some doors to you too. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I came on as a barista, and I thought, hey, I'm gonna go try this part-time, and I had some money coming in, and that money quickly dried up, and so I was in a situation where I thought, I could go and start another business again. For whatever reason, I felt like that this opportunity gave me not only the ability to humble myself in different ways and learn these kind of personal lessons, but it was also really amazing because, and this was Starbucks, by the way, gave me the ability to learn business in a new way. The level of discipline that these successful companies have is something that I didn't have. I was very organic, and so I had to learn in some ways how to be disciplined with my communication, with my approach, with my leadership, with how to read a P&L, right? These kinds of things. And so, yeah, I was able to move up through the ranks and became a shift supervisor and became an assistant store manager. And I remember one time I was standing at the register. I think I was a shift manager at the time, and I had a high school friend come in, and I was, he came in and then walked up to the register, and he said, "What are you doing here? Like, I thought you were like a successful entrepreneur." And and I had a moment where I was like a little bit embarrassed, and then I realized I don't need to be embarrassed. Like, I'm thankful to be here,
Right.
And so I really wanted to do everything I could to just take pride in that. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned from a lot of really amazing people and leaders, that were mentoring me. And so, yeah, I was able to eventually move up into management roles and then multi-unit management roles. I spent some time on the lean team over at Starbucks, motion test teams over there. It was, a really wonderful opportunity.
That's great.
And, I think that was also one of the first experiences I had, where I wanted to really manifest a new life. And at the time we were still in Colorado, and we took a trip to visit some family in Laguna Beach. And I was sitting in Laguna Beach one day, and I said, I'm going to oversee this market. And my wife said, well, you're a barista in Colorado. How are you going to oversee this market in Southern California? And I said, I will. And in a matter of 3 years, I was. And so that was one of those things that was really inspiring for me to be able to, again, this realization of, wow, I can't really do anything if I set my mind to it, So it was a great journey over there. I spent about 7 years over there and was very thankful for the time over there.
That's great. You've mentioned mentors a couple different times. I think your aunt was one. You obviously had the teacher. That was another one. You mentioned a few in Starbucks. Has that been something that you search out? I know I tend to search out mentors if I'm trying to get into a field and I want to follow in certain footsteps, if you will, or at least figure out the path. Having a mentor or someone to kind of guide you or show you is invaluable. Some of us seek those out purposely. Others just happen upon them at the right time. How did that work for you?
I think both. I think when I was younger, I think in some ways my ego didn't allow me to seek those people out. I think it was that was a little bit hard for me in my younger years.
Mm.
And then I began to realize, as I kind of like my ego started to burn away, there's amazing people in the world. And the more that I can learn from these amazing people, the stronger I am, the stronger leader and husband and father I can be for people.
Yeah.
And I met some really amazing people on the way. I had um, a vice president in Southern California at Starbucks that helped me with really understanding what listening really looked like and the different levels of listening and how to discipline my mind when somebody was talking. And these some of these little things, really impactful. And yeah, definitely, my grandfather was a mentor. My parents are, even though we've had some bumps, but in different ways, I've learned from them.
Yeah.
So today, I absolutely seek them out. I set aside my ego a long time ago and said, there's people in the world that are just flat out better than me at things, smarter than me, and if I can take one tidbit from a conversation with them that can help me help others, then it was worth the conversation.
Yeah.
And so now I love learning from people. I think even some mentors from people that I haven't met. Books that I read,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're philosophical or leadership books. One of those people I haven't had a chance to meet, quite a few times is Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks or the CEO
Yeah.
of Starbucks. And, even like, some of those little tidbits in that story, he's been a mentor, even though, we don't see each other. Right.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I think you run into these situations where whether it's mentors of people you don't know, mentors of people you do. And then I think also sometimes for me, I've realized people can be mentors and they don't even know they're mentors.
Yep.
My grandfather, my other grandfather on the other side of my family, he said something one time, and him and my grandmother had also had a very bumpy marriage and filled with affairs and different things. And I said, Grandpa, I said, how do you get through all of this? And he said, I realized a long time ago that everything is under my control. Everything, whether or not I have a good or bad marriage, my relationship with my children, my success. And he said, he said, David, I didn't accept that until I was in my 60s. I would blame other people and I would say, oh, that's my parents' fault or, whatever, right? Or I got fired from a job because they have the problem. And he said, these are ultimately just lies. And he said, I had this realization that everything is my fault, therefore everything I can control. And that was a perfect opportunity for me. He mentored me that day, and we didn't have an official mentor relationship,
Right.
but that was another kind of impactful moment for me. So yeah, I think that they're everywhere around you. I don't know how you deal with it. I'd love to know, but for me, I kind of look at everybody as a mentor for me, even if it's a neighbor that I can learn
Yeah.
from.
Well,
That's kind of
everybody
how I
has
see that.
jewels and bits of wisdom that they can share. And so, yeah, I do
Right.
try to pick it up everywhere I look and turn my ears, if you will. Um,
For sure.
the other thing, too, is that I'm hearing that some of these people led by example. Your grandfather and your aunt and some of these other people, it just sounds like you had some really great influences. Every home can be rocky. Some of us have worse starts than others, but there's still in your family been some really great influences that have put some seeds in you that have sprouted and grown into what you've started doing now. And you went from Starbucks and you expounded, you got into Pressed Juicery. I know that you've also received numerous awards and have been acknowledged for the efforts that you've made and the business success arena. Do you want to tell us about some of those? What are some of your highlights?
Yeah, I'm so grateful that I've had a chance to work with a lot of amazing people. And yeah, when I left Starbucks, I went to a company called Pressed Juicery. And for those people that don't know what Pressed Juicery is, it was a small kind of pressed juice company out of LA. A very wonderful, kind founder and COO. And I joined the company to oversee operations, so basically all of the front end growth and operations and all of that stuff. And we it was a wonderful journey. We grew the company, raised a lot of money over there, and we grew the company from Hawaii to New York, and Costco partnerships, and the company is still growing. I valued at I think today $400+ million, and so it was an excellent journey. I worked with some people over there that I'm very thankful for, that helped me even understand, the venture capital side of things.
Hmm.
And I'd raised money, but really kind of in a new way, scalability, four wall, when I was at Starbucks, I did a lot of stuff with four wall economics and looking at, formulaic real estate, type things and,
Right.
negotiating some of these type things. And so, so yeah, that was very much a highlight. Our back end of manufacturing and distribution, she was brilliant. So I was able to see, how all that was put together and how we, FDA guidelines and making sure that people never got sick on products and those kinds of things.
Hmm.
So that was, those are very thankful for that. So yeah, like I said, I've had this wonderful opportunity to work with a lot of amazing people, from Starbucks to Pressed Juicery, to even right now, my co-founder at our parent company is worked at Google and former vice president of global digital payments. So these really amazing people, and I'm really thankful. So a lot of these awards for tech innovation or leadership or top 100 business leaders, I am very thankful and honored to receive a lot of these. But I think at the end of the day, this I've learned from so many amazing people, and I view it as my responsibility to pass this stuff on. So I want to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody around me, from my kids to the people I work with, I can share all of these amazing things that I've learned with everybody. And ultimately I view that as my legacy, is how I can help these people and share these things that have really been taught to me. And I'm, thankful for that.
Absolutely. What kind of things are you working on this year then?
So we're working on something cool. We built, in our current company right now, Zassi, we built a marketplace, and it's a social marketplace for creative people. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is I'm actually a musician, and my dad's a musician. We come from a very musical family,
Hmm.
and I love, I have a special love for creative people. Whether they're making handmade shoes or musicians or artists or whatever.
Hmm.
And one of the things we're really excited about is we built this marketplace, and over the next 3 to 6 months, we will be launching a virtual art gallery and a kind of a digital experience where people can not only buy curated products or curated artwork, but I'm not sure if you've heard of NFTs, but we're launching the ability to also exchange and sell NFTs on the marketplace as well.
I haven't. What
So
are NFTs, just for our listeners?
Yeah, so what it is, it's a digital asset. So for instance, if an artist has a song and or let's say a piece of artwork, they can sell the physical piece of artwork for whatever amount of money, but they can also sell a digital part of that artwork, which is called an NFT, and they can own a digital piece of that artwork and the rights to that. And so it's kind of a new cool thing that's coming out, where people are starting to buy NFTs for music, or like there was a LeBron James NFT that sold recently for I think it was like a dunk that he had or something.
Sure.
And so yeah, I think about it almost like an autograph in a way. It's kind of a one of a kind, limited edition digital token type thing that you can have, and these NFTs will be built on the elements of blockchain inside of the platform. So today, we have this social marketplace. That you can buy and sell products through influencers. We have an affiliate model we're building in, but yeah, we're really excited that we can really take take this platform and not only give all of these creative people the ability to sell a product on our platform, but it'll give them the ability to also monetize by creating these digital tokens for that same product.
Yeah.
And so as a customer, you can not only own the physical product, but you can own a digital version of that product too, or part of limited edition part of that product. So it's a passion of mine, because I've seen so many of my friends and family, or creative people that I've met, and some of these people are big LA stars, and some of them are small, and but a lot of these people they don't know how to monetize all the time, or how to make money. It's hard as an artist to make money, and
Right.
this really gives these creative people a platform to not only sell their products but monetize them in a new way. So that's what we're working on today, and yeah, over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be launching these new updates, and including our virtual gallery and some kind of NFT elements in there. We're really excited about that.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, especially in this era of the pandemic. This is a great venture that you're putting forward, because I feel like even pre-pandemic, the age of the big malls were starting to go away, if you will. But having a being able to have virtual art and getting into your NFTs and expanding, it's kind of like diversifying. And I think that's, it's smart. It's such a great idea. How long have you been working on this?
So, we started this a little over 2 years ago, and, it's hard to build companies and hard to build technology. And so yeah, we started a couple of years ago. We launched last year with the social marketplace, and we're adding these elements today, and that's exactly it. I mean, COVID's really changed things too, for not only restaurants and stuff like that, but everybody. I mean, people aren't going into art galleries. They're not going to see concerts right now. I mean, people aren't buying stuff like that. And so the revenue's completely dropped off for a lot of these creative people. So I'm very passionate. My co-founder's, he's an art collector, traveled to over 100 countries, really passionate about this. And so, yeah, we want to really create a platform where all of these amazing creative people, that maybe their only outlet was, selling something on Etsy, or, walking into an art gallery, hoping that they can get a piece of art on the wall. This will give them a completely different way. Every one of them will be able to create their own, personal gallery, whether they're selling art or, again, products that they're making. So yeah, I think, of course, we're excited about the business, but more importantly, I'm excited to help creative people, because I'm also a creative person.
Right.
And I see that it's hard to monetize a lot of this stuff. So that's really what our passion is, and we're excited about that.
Have you thought about writing a book?
I have thought about writing a book, and I actually started a book probably a year ago, and I probably still have 6 months to a year to go on it. But it's actually great that you brought that up, because it maybe a new inspiration for me to, I've been so busy, it's kind of been on the back burner. But yeah, but no, I have, definitely.
Well, you're articulate. You have a plethora of life experience, and you have these foundational skills that you developed early that have now blossomed into what you are today. And I think those insights are important, especially in terms of you wanting to leave a legacy and leave that mark, and help others. That's a really great way, and also will inspire maybe someone that came from a similar background. So
Thanks,
yeah,
I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Very, very thankful for that.
David, I've had a pleasure talking with you today. I'd like to maybe reach out next year and kind of follow up and see how things have blossomed for you with this new venture. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Evan and I'd be honored. I enjoyed the conversation, and your story is equally, it's very inspiring for me when I heard a little bit of it. So I'd love to spend more time with you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
This has been Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany, exploring deep stories from real-life guests with real-life experiences, providing insight to our listeners with every story. Stay up to date on future podcasts by bookmarking Digital Voices with BoTiffany.podbean.com, and follow Bo on social media by searching Digital Voices with Bo Tiffany. Have an idea for a future story? Send your idea to acrmadison@gmail.com. Until next time, grab life by the horns and keep inspiring others.